Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about frequencies and explain what frequencies are, how they work, and more importantly, how they're creating your future and what happens in your life due to the law of affinity, or as a lot of people commonly know that as the law of attraction. Well, the law of attraction deals with the science of frequencies. So the first universal law dealing with frequencies is everything in the universe is a frequency. So that means when I say everything, that means a person, a place, a thing, a thought, an event, winning the lottery. These are all frequencies. In other words, there's the universal field of one that we can call God, we can call the divine source, whatever you're comfortable with there. And then out of that comes parts of the divine. So they're less than the divine whole, but also part of the divine. Okay, so the number one universal law is everything in the universe is a frequency. Okay, the second law is every frequency has a thumbprint of the force. So everything has its own specific frequency, and each of those frequencies have a amount of God force they're holding. So the Mayans measured this God force in 1 to 13, and when we still do that in many ways. You'll find that in Christianity there were the 12 apostles, and then there was Jesus, and then in Camelot there were 12 Knights of the Round Table and Arthur. In the United States we have 12 jurors and a judge. It's always where there's the 12 represents those in union, and the 13th is always the transcendent divine entity. So how this works out in the Mayan calendar is each of the glyphs, there's 20 glyphs that work with the timing of the calendar, and there's 13 frequencies. So the days as they move, each then will have a frequency number and a glyph depicted, which represents the energy of the day. So the frequencies run from 1 to 13. They correlate with the frequencies I'm talking about now. So and a really simplistic way of looking at this is you can say one is the lowest form of God energy, or the furthest away from knowing union and high consciousness. And as you move up the scale to the 12th, by the time you get to the 12th energy, you're looking at where people would say ascended masters are, angels are, that are so high advanced and close to God, yet not God, still a part of God rather than the unity of God, would be the 12. So when you're looking at frequencies and you're saying, what is the frequency of something, we can measure it in this way. How does something make you feel? If something makes you feel good, now I'm not talking about some bizarre, sociopathic mind thinking good. I'm just talking basic, simplistic terms here so we can have a conversation about it, because there's always going to be gray areas and everything. But on a very simplistic level, one would be, a one frequency would be feelings of anger and hatred and, complete fear. Where you move up through the scale, and as you're getting up to the 10, 11, 12s, you're looking at singing and dancing and falling in love, and laughter is a very high frequency. I found that when I spontaneously started channeling a few years ago. I knew nothing about that, and I'm going to do some lessons on that for those of you that might be interested in contacting your own ability to do that, because we all have it, and some of us are more gifted in certain areas, just like there's better runners or swimmers or whatnot in the Olympics, but you can definitely work on your own gift, and so I'm going to give you some tools to do that in another video later. But to get back to the frequency, so the higher frequencies are things that feel closer to God, that make you feel happy, that make you feel joy, that make you feel, beauty's a really high frequency, because as is nature, because you feel the hand of God in that. So that's really simple. So you think the 1 is the furthest away from the God force, or least conscious frequency, and as we move up to the 12th, it's the highest frequency, where 13 is the divine frequency, or miracles are possible. Although you will find that in any of the higher frequencies, 10, 11, 12, you'll also have things occurring that you could deem as miraculous. So there we have the second law, universal law dealing with frequency, is that 1, everything in the universe is a frequency. 2, all frequencies have a thumbprint of the God force. Okay? Now the third and final law having to do with this frequency attunement is the law of affinity, or like attracts like. The law of attraction is another word for it. I like to, the way it was given to me was as frequency attunement, and this is the basics of it. Everything in the universe has a frequency, as we went through. All those frequencies carry a certain amount of God force energy. Now, the third part of this, the like attracts like part, the law of affinity part, is that because we are creative beings, just as God is and God created us to be, these frequencies that we hold with us, some of them we brought karmically, but most of them we consciously choose, which is part of our test and lesson here. We send out waves, electrical waves, like okay, the frequency waves is really what they are. The frequency waves send out waves in their frequency. So say in this case we're dealing with a high frequency being, okay, and they send out high frequency things. In return, they will pull in anything on that frequency. So that's when, let me see, when people are, say, falling in love, and people say they're walking on air, they're losing weight, they're smiling all the time, the grocer's giving them free coupons or whatever, everything seems to be going well. It's a basic use of the law of affinity, or the law of attraction, in that like is attracting like. You're a high frequency, you're in love, and you're drawing to you all these wonderful experiences. Conversely, if you find yourself in a really negative, low place, you can find yourself running into all the things that attune with that low energy. So if you're in a low emotion, fear, addiction, anger, you'll be pulling in things that are very unpleasant people, unpleasant circumstances, illness, accidents, jail, which is why it's very important, if you're a high frequency person, to be careful what you choose, because if you are in the car with, say, somebody that's addicted and going to buy drugs, just because you're a high frequency, if you're a 10 and they're at a 2 and you're in the car with them, whenever you come into communication with another being, you have to find a meeting frequency place where you can both communicate from, which is why you'll find, like, if you meet somebody, initially you might have a good or bad feeling about them, or maybe you have one friend that every time you go over their house, they're just a bummer, and like you're just like, oh man, this person brings me down all the time. That's an example of coming into communication or connection with somebody that's a lower frequency than you. They're doing exactly that. They're bringing you down, because when you're in a lower frequency, it's very hard to get up out of it. It feels like quicksand, and you have to work very diligently to raise your frequency, and the way you do that is you add higher frequency things. Unfortunately, when you're in a low frequency, you don't feel like laughing or going to see a comedy or playing sports or doing things, painting or something that would normally bring you joy. So you have to kind of trick yourself. Like nature's would be my best cure-all for somebody in a low frequency, because it's the divine frequency. So if you get out in trees and water, you're going to be lifted, because that's your natural frequency anyway, but you won't have as many blocks to it. Whereas if your happy-go-lucky friend comes in and you're like been brokenhearted and you're in the dumps and crying, you're just hating that person right now, because you can't get up to that happy energy. And so that'll happen a lot at work and with friends or in relationships, where you're realizing your frequencies aren't just meshing, that your natural frequency feels better with somebody else. Maybe you have a friend that you always get along with and have a great time with, and that would be somebody that's on your frequency range. So you can comfortably glide together, if you will. So that's the basics of frequency. A lot of people have been asking me that. I've done a bunch of lectures on it in my book, and I'm going to try and get my lecture into a format where I can put it out here for you guys. So anyone interested in learning more about frequencies can listen to the long lecture. But I just wanted to give a brief overview because frequencies are very important and we're creating with them. And I hope this helps. Have a great day.